Hello and welcome to biology. So today we're just going to introduce you to the concept of biology. We are going to introduce the idea of cells, and we're going to help you to identify and classify cells as well too. So let's start by going ahead and taking a look at what we're going to study in biology. So in biology, we are going to study small and we're going to end large. So grade 10 biology actually probably has the biggest span in terms of we start at the cell and we actually end up studying the organism or you, and we're going to look at different organ systems within you. So it's quite a big range that we cover. So in biology, it's important for us to understand the simplest unit of life. And the simplest unit of life is considered to be the cell. In chemistry, the simplest unit is the atom. Now we're looking at the cell. We have to think about how small cells actually are. So I have this link on your homepage here. Go ahead and click on it, and it actually allows you to pan through, and it allows you to compare cells to things that are larger than it, and it also allows you to compare cells to things that are smaller than it. What I want you to appreciate from this is I want you to appreciate how small cells are, but also how much variety you can have between cells as well too. Atoms tend to be about the same size approximately compared to the differences in cells. You can have some very, very microscopic cells, and you can have some very large cells in comparison to the others. Now let's go ahead and let's talk about the definition of biology. You would have seen this in grade 9, but just a reminder that bio means living. So biology is the study of life. So again, we're going to be studying life. In grade 9, you studied life through ecosystems and food chains. Here we're going to study the smallest unit of life, cells, and we're going to eventually build those up into organisms. The big question though is how do I know if something is alive or not? I know it seems like a silly question, but we're going to be looking at cells which are extremely small. So how do we decide that those cells are alive and things that are smaller than it or other things might not be considered to be alive? So this is a list of things that biologists came up with in order for something to be considered to be alive. So living things have to have a lifespan. We're going to talk a little bit later about maybe possible ways that you can expand your lifespan. They have to grow and reproduce. So we're going to talk a little bit about that growth and that reproduction in this unit as well too. It's called mitosis. They have to be able to respond to changes in their environment. So they have to be adaptable, and they have to be able to respond to those changes in an advantageous way. Anything that's living requires energy, and anything that's living produces waste. So if something meets this criteria, then it is considered to be something that's living in biology, and we would study it. Now let's take a look at this concept of cells. Move myself up here. So a cell is said to be the most basic unit of life. Organisms can be made up of different numbers of cells. So an organism that's made up of only one cell is unicellular. So we can actually have a living organism that's only one cell. Obviously, you guessed that we have more than one cell though. So there are also organisms that can have more than one cell. Those organisms are called multicellular. So multicellular is more than one cell, multiple cells. Unicellular is just one cell. Now let's talk a little bit about the cell theory. So cells are governed by a state of rules, and these are the 3 rules that govern cell theory. This says that all living things are made of cells and their products. So anything that's living is considered to be made up of cells, cells being the smallest unit of life. The cell is the smallest unit of life, and then all other cells come from other cells. So a cell can't be produced just on its own, not spontaneous generation. A cell has to come from already a pre-existing cell. So I have a really great video as well too on the history of cell theory. It helps to go over some of these discoveries, and it kind of throws some drama in it too. So it's not very long. Take a look on the history of the cell theory, and you can see how these 3 rules actually came to be developed. Now I want to help to classify cells a little bit. We have 2 different types of cells that we're going to be studying or that might make up an organism. The first type of cell that we're going to look at is called prokaryotes. So a prokaryote is either simple, but they actually can be complex. So typically they're simple. Sometimes they can be complex. The simplest cells are known as prokaryotes. And these cells lack a nucleus and other advanced cell parts. So prokaryotes typically are single cell organisms. So the idea is if you're a single cell organism, you have to be able to do everything that organism needs to stay alive. So in a single cell, you have to be able to produce energy, you have to be able to reproduce, you have to be able to get rid of waste. So it's quite a lot to ask of a cell. And these cells actually don't have any nucleus or any advanced organelles. So they're very, very, very basic in structure. This is an example of what prokaryotes might look like. So we've got a prokaryote here, here, or here. So they seem to have a similar basic structure. A eukaryote, on the other hand, is considered to be more complex. Eukaryotes can exist as single cells, but they can also exist as multicellular organisms. So you yourself are a multicellular organism. That means that you are made up of eukaryotic cells. There also are some single-celled organisms that are made up of eukaryotic cells, or a eukaryotic cell. They're more advanced. They have complex internal organization, including a nucleus and many other cell parts. So in a couple lessons, we're going to be looking at cell organelles. So cell organelles are these complex parts. They're like special organs within the cell. So just like your heart and your brain and your lungs play a special role within the cell, all of these cell organelles actually play a special role. And you can see this cell overall looks much more complex than this cell here. So this cell just kind of is a mess of junk inside of there. Nothing's really organized. Whereas in a eukaryote, everything is nice and organized, and we actually have these membrane-bound compartments. Categories of eukaryotes, we have protists, fungi, plants, animals. So all of these have eukaryotic cells, so they're actually quite diverse. So examples of eukaryotic cells, we've got a eukaryotic cell here, here, so you can see more internal organization. Now we're going to take a look at prokaryote versus eukaryote. So we're going to take a look at actually categorizing the different categories that can come within them. So first of all, we have an organism. So an organism is a living thing. And once you have an organism, you can divide it into two different categories. You can divide it into prokaryotes and eukaryotes. So our example of prokaryotes that we looked at before, those kind of little tiny green capsules, that was actually a picture of E. coli. So E. coli is a living substance. It's single cell, and it's made up of prokaryotic cells. Let's take a closer look at eukaryotes. So eukaryotes, we can actually branch. You can have single-celled eukaryotes. An example of a single-cell eukaryote is an amoeba. So it's a single cell, just like the E. coli over here, but you can see already, if you squint a little bit, it's got a lot more organization inside. So it actually has membrane-bound organelles. Eukaryotes can also be multi-celled organisms as well too. And then we can sort these multi-celled organisms into animals and also into plants. We're going to be studying animal organisms this unit, and we're also going to be studying plant organisms as well this unit. Even though the cells within both animals and plants are considered to be eukaryotic, there's specific animal cells and there's specific plant cells. The reason there's two different types of cells is for function. So animals have much different needs than plants do. So different types of cells allow them to do different things. And this is our organization. This is what we're going to be looking at this unit. So after this, we're going to talk about how you might see cells, and then we'll go ahead and talk about those different cell organelles that you might see within a cell too.